Alright, this is gonna be a very hard video to make because I've made like probably 4 different versions. Yes, there was supposed to be a video that came out today, but I forgot to inform my audience that I ordered something for that video instead of, shouldn't have promised like a video to be out specifically today, because that thing still has not come in yet. This video is going to be talking about updates, and a lot of it is basically updates, but the one thing I do want to talk about that's kind of not an update is that I briefly mentioned PTSD in my Trust is So Important video, and some people might have thought that I used it as like a one-off word to like describe trauma, but no, I genuinely have it. Something that, you know, a lot of people tend to hate is like, oh, you can't say this word, you can't say this, nothing could be a joke. But being someone that has it, I now understand the weight of it, and I understand other people's survivors and everybody else that has been through that mental trauma. Yes, some people use that as a coping mechanism to joke about it and all that, but when you categorize a specific disorder and use it as a punchline for an inconvenience, I have an issue with that. And I've grown comfortable that to say that if I hear anybody saying that in like, obviously, you know, I'm not going to fight online, but I will fight someone in person if they don't respect that. Yes, you know, people have went through things, but unless you're actually diagnosed with this disorder, I feel like that should be off limits. And it sucks that now it's become a cultural norm where a lot of people tend to just use those words as punchlines. And yes, I'm a hypocrite because I tend to use ending oneself and self-harm terms in gaming with my friends, online gaming, and it's not right. I will say that it's not right. It kind of just like, you know, happens because of frustration and all that. But a lot of people that tend to use that language that I've seen use it as a punchline for like an inconvenience or embarrassing moments. But no, unless you actually have it, I don't want to hear you using that term as a punchline. That being said, let's move on to the schedule-ish for what's to come. So the video that was supposed to release today is a passion video that I want to make, basically criticizing labels, and even like maybe just subcultures, a lot of stereotypes and all that. I briefly talked about it in community posts, talking about like what I was like very passionate about. And originally the video was going to be just talking about a band and an album that I really love, but somehow I'm going to be able to tie all that in with that. And I'm very glad that that now that I know what I have, it's easier to have conversations about this stuff, because now it's not just about like mental health, like, oh yeah, you went through some shit. No, like I want to talk about what we can do as a society to make things better for people that have suffered that stuff, as well as what we should say is not okay in terms of, and what is not okay and what should be culturally accepted for the people that have. And offending is one of those words where it's like, you don't want to really like, a lot of it has been used as a term, really a lot of words actually have been used so much to the point where they've lost meaning. And if you trigger a response from someone that has a disorder, you better expect to get your ass beat. That's all I'm gonna say. That kind of conversation really within the video. If you saw my video on authenticity within alternative music YouTubers, you would know that I have a lot of opinions and a lot of takes specifically regarding labels and all that, as subcultures and negative stereotypes and all that. So yeah, it's a video that I'm very passionate to, whenever I have the chance to make, I'm very passionate to make it. The next two videos, like, I've been waiting because basically after this video gets released, there's going to be nothing really coming out until maybe next week. And that would be, that video. But then there's the part 2 of the 100 subscriber special, which is in production. I'm halfway done more than halfway done production of that. And then the third video within the triple video series of the breaking down and end of the year recap, which ties into the first thing. And because you have to wait, I thought, well, I might as well just talk about Saturday for skydiving, because this video would just be nothing really without some reason to continue watching this. And I'm going to break down the 3 albums a little bit more in depth than I did in my Trust is So Important video. So the first album is going to be called Whenever I'm Done With This, I Want to Hug the People That I Love. And as I said before in the, I feel like I'm just not going to even bring that video up anymore, because I'm just going to continue to repeat the same thing. But yeah, what I said in that video is that the first album is about high school pretty much. The second album is about trauma from elementary school and the college thing, as well as the third album is pretty much, I would say, hating my identity because I'm related to my father. But specifically if I had to categorize the albums as like emotions, I'd say the first album is about confusion, the second album is about denial, and the third album is kind of about anger and acceptance. The first album I would categorize to be an album about, like, basically, and I've said it before, like, Lucas from Afar, specifically, the second album, Frozen Within My Self-Conscience, was centered around my thoughts and putting my thoughts into music. Well, considering that for a long period of time, well, not a long period of time, since I was about 16, and I actually got into writing poems and knowing that I can write songs in the worst mental states, I thought that, and even like having experience from torn postcards, that I knew that even if I didn't know how to play the guitar, I could still make this work, because I'm good at coming up with songs on the fly, and almost every song on those albums were done in one take except for one. Not everything was recorded in the same spot. The first 2 albums were mostly recorded in the same spot, but the second album was recorded not in the same spot. And regarding that, like, I've talked about it before. With Lucas from Afar, and was specifically a project centered around finding my identity. Going through those thoughts and emotions and stuff, and putting that all into instrumentation. With this album, I put those thoughts into words, and I would say that with the 3 albums, this album is probably the most concise. It's 12 tracks long. I would say it's more like 11 because there's an interlude. But the overall feeling from this album might be hard to listen to, considering that it's not just my experience, it's something that a lot of people can relate to. And there's a lot of subject matter within these albums, but specifically that album, I would argue, is like at least, while it is mostly, it's not one-dimensional, it's very like trying to find itself, and then it actually concludes. With the other albums, I would say the last one definitely has an ending, but a lot of the albums tend to highlight, or well, the both albums specifically are centered around specific times in my life. And it's weird because while I felt like there wasn't a whole lot to write for the first album is coming from thoughts more than just like the overall outside factors and contributors to my feelings at the time. And then with the other albums, it's strictly about those factors. Um, that album specifically, the first album, is definitely centered around the mental health aspect side of things, outside of the others too. Um, but that being said, I would say that might be the favorite of amongst, as well as maybe the third one. I personally feel like my best work comes from the third album, but I can understand why people will like the first album because it's definitely it's the most raw, but it's also the most authentically emotional. And whenever for a long period of time, I've been inspired by like Dashboard Confessional, and I've always wanted to make an acoustic project, and I knew that everything came perfectly into place because I knew that this was going to be Saturday for Skydiving. I held on Saturday for Skydiving for about maybe 5-ish years, the title or the name, and I knew that this was going to be the project. And I am very glad that it turned out the way it did. The second album is called Melancholy PTSD, which, as you can expect, is centered around the aspect of trauma. And I would argue, is probably the worst sounding out of the bunch because I decided to add electric drums to it, like me actually playing the drums after the recording of the guitar, and both in different places. The guitar was and the singing were recorded in one place, and then the drums were recorded in another place. But at the same time, from an artistic point of view, I do think that it adds to like it's hard to listen to both, like, instrumentally, and I might just be criticizing myself at this point. Some people might enjoy it, but it adds to the harsh reality of the moments that I had to go through, and that I had to think about, and it's definitely the most emotionally impactful album for me because it was actually no. Now that I think about it, I was already affected by the first album, but then that album broke me. Um, a lot of the songs on that album are directed specifically towards people, and that's something that I've always wanted to try to avoid. I've always wanted to write from my thoughts and feelings towards myself, but then that's boring, kind of one-dimensional. So I really wanted to cover basically yelling at the people that have caused me pain. Um, and that album ends off on a very depressing note because it sounds like I'm defeated. And I was almost completely sure that I wanted to end after that. But then a bunch of stuff happened, and I believe it was after a storm. That's when I started recording the third album. And regarding everything, regarding my feelings and emotions and everything that I've been through, I felt like I've covered almost everything, and I had to at least dig a little bit into my personal life, specifically with family. And then that brings us to the third album. I would say that, like I said before, the third album is definitely the best sounding album from an instrumental standpoint, from a theme standpoint, but I'm not as satisfied with it because, yeah, even though it has a conclusion to it, you could just say that like I made half an album and I called it a day. But you know, like I said before, I felt like everything came into place and I was done. I was genuinely done with writing serious music about things that I don't care about anymore. But yeah, I still get affected to this day. Um, Especially, you know, when I had to deal with that bullshit in 2022, that I felt like I felt like it was a good conclusion. A lot of people will tend to probably discredit this project from a professional standpoint and point of view. If you didn't see my like top albums of 2023, I said that my favorite album of the year was a demo album. It was by Jetty Bones, and it was called Songs I Wrote instead of KMSing myself, or you know what I mean. And that album showed that like you can be raw and authentic without the massive, overly produced stuff. And even that sounds still better than like my album, of course, because like I didn't put a lot of effort into it. I tried to play a guitar, tried to play a banjo, tried to play a ukulele, and I think it sounds fine. It's not anything new, but the lyrics and the way I play those instruments will make you think about like this might be grander from just the perspective of music of or good music. This can come from the perspective of listenable art. And you know, a lot of people tend to reference a lot of like badly made badly made emotional music. My one of my favorite examples that I still just I now I understand is the Brave Little Abacus. I don't like the Brave Little Abacus, but I know a lot of people like that raw emotion, and I wanted to go into this project with that perspective. Raw, authentic emotion. And I also included like some slip ups. I don't think I did takes away from anything because it was one takes. And I can't re-record everything because I was literally learning how to play these, or I didn't even learn how to play the guitar. I was learning how to make the guitar sound, or guitar, banjo, ukulele, sound good for those specific songs. I did not go in there with this is what I'm going to do, this is how I'm going to do it. No, it was just strictly experimentation, and if you know my music, you know that's what I've always been about. With my second music project, Lucas from Afar, the first album sounds like I was trying to figure out my sound. The second album sounds like an album. With this album, I felt like I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, had it down par, and then for the second album, I wanted to make it sound a little bit different. And then the third album, everything just came perfectly into the right place, and it came out exactly, if not even better than the way I expected it to. That being said, that's all really for this update video. Stay tuned because, so regarding with the TikTok thing, because, you know, I spend way too much time on the other stuff, since, you know, TikTok could probably get banned in Canada because of the prime minister that's going to be put into place, I'm deciding I'm letting go of TikTok. I didn't get 100 followers, which is funny. I had over 3,000 likes. I had over 106,000 views on my most viewed TikTok, as well as like 13,000 views on another TikTok. I'm leaving TikTok for YouTube Shorts as well as Instagram Reels, and I'm only going to be posting like funny music I make in GarageBand on those. Done with the realistic songwriting for now, but I do have a serious instrumental project that, once again, will be released after the 3 Saturday for Skydiving albums, which I will announce in the third video. I have a lot to do in the next couple of weeks regarding like content, so I'm just going to focus on that. That's all. Peace.